Welcome to Savvy Stewardship with Tim Kaiser. Today, I am here with Pastor Randy Davis. He pastors the Jesus Alive Ministries in Pennsylvania and is a administrator, a helper. I'm not sure. He'll explain more with the group called Reach the Rest, which my wife and I partner with and love. Great ministry. So, Randy, if you could take a moment and just introduce yourself to the listeners today.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. I'm glad to be here. I will say this is my first podcast, man. So
Yeah.
so be gentle with me. I'm never have done this before. So really excited though to talk about what God's doing, not only in my life at Jesus Alive Ministries, but at Reach the Rest. And so I'm a bivocational pastor, wear a couple of hats, and have the joy of being able to serve with not just a local church, but also a global ministry that is trying to get the gospel to the places it's never been.
Awesome. So we'll start with some really easy softball questions to ease things in. So what is we're similar in age, I think, right? So we probably grew up younger, we actually played hymns in churches. What is your favorite, if you could pick a favorite hymn, what would it be?
Probably How Great Thou Art. I love that one. That's, you're right. I grew up I'm 52. So I grew up there in the mid 80s in a Pentecostal church. I pastor a non-denominational church now. I came out of the church, between the Church of God and the Assemblies of God. And there were a whole lot of hymn singing back in the day, but the red-backed hymnal, and you had certain page numbers that you had memorized, and so. But yeah, that would be, I think, as a hymn, that's probably one of the ones that I really still cling to.
How about favorite modern day, contemporary worship song? Is there something that's like, scratching the itch right now in your church, or something you've been putting on replay in your set list?
There are songs that I love that I don't think are great corporate worship songs.
Yeah.
So we're really careful here at the church to what we do. I'm not saying they're bad songs. One that comes to mind that I love, but we just don't do corporately is How He Loves. Great song, but it's very me centric. It's all about me, how much God loves me, how much, and that's great. Sometimes driving in the car down the road, windows down, cranked up, I need to be reminded that He does love me, even though I'm a knucklehead. But for corporate worship, I'm right now. Great Are You, Lord is one that I really like by All Sons and Daughters. Reminding me that every breath that I breathe belongs to Him. And then Holy Forever is another one that's just a wonderful reminder.
I don't think I know that one. Who sings that? Who's doing that? I'll look it up afterwards.
I think it's there. I mean, everybody does the songs now, and Chris Tomlin takes the song that somebody else wrote, makes it popular. I want to say that Holy Forever is another one that he does. But as far as a group that I love the way that they, it's Shane and Shane. I love Shane and Shane.
I love Psalm 46
because they've taken the they take the Psalms. And just, they're singing the word, and I love that. So anything by Shane and Shane might find its way into the Spotify playlist. I actually participate on the worship team. I'm a drummer.
Nice.
The Lord found me a long time ago as a drummer in a bar band, and when I came to faith in Him, I was like, all right, I'm only going to use this to glorify His name. And so He has given me opportunity. I play drums here at the church on a rotation with a couple other drummers, unless they need a bass player. And then I fumble my way through that. And then if they need a singer, I apologize to the congregation and, go for it.
Yeah, interesting. So you talking about Shane and Shane singing the Psalms, and I, if correct me if I'm wrong, but I took a peek at your podcast where you're preaching through the Psalms right now in your church, right?
Yeah. We do Summer in the Psalms every year, and and part of there's a couple of reasons for doing that. Some of it is being bivocational. It's kind of nice to, in the summer, I open it up to members of my leadership team, and they pick a psalm, and so I'm woven in through the summer, and then I allow others. So our children's pastor will take a Sunday. Our youth pastor will take a Sunday. We've got a few other people in the church that God has gifted, and I'm super blessed there, man. I mean, I can remember in the early days, if I preached 51 out of 52 Sundays because I didn't have anybody in the
Right.
early days. I didn't, and some of that's, I mean, I shouldn't say some of it. Most of that's my fault. We can get into later. I now have, over, I think it's 13 weeks, we're doing 13 or 14 weeks, we're doing Summer in the Psalms. I'm only preaching 3 of those weeks
Wow.
because I've got that many other people that not only are gifted but have a desire. They want to share how the Holy Spirit is speaking to them through what God is saying through this psalm in their lives. And
Yeah.
I've realized that it's real easy as a pastor to be like, no, they've got to, I'm the only one, and
Mhm.
which is just foolish. But the people, most churches experience a summer slump, right? That's a real thing
Yeah.
in most congregations. And not here,
Wow.
because they don't know. I'm very tight-lipped about it. Nobody knows who's coming up next week. And the people show up to find out, who that's going to be. They want to hear from these different people in the congregation that they hang out with and they see and they're doing life with. And so it has been it's wonderful, and it gives me a little bit of a break through the summer so that I can be praying through and developing what it is I'm going to kick off the fall. We always start off with a series. This year, not so much. We started in Ephesians in January, a verse by verse, word by word, kind of just tearing apart of the book of Ephesians.
Yeah.
And when we stopped to do Summer in the Psalms, we had made it all the way to chapter 4. So we're going to be in Ephesians for a hot minute. But I am I used to be a topical guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's how I grew up.
Mhm.
I mean, in the charismatic
Yeah.
churches, which I've kind of distanced myself from some of it.
Mhm.
My wife coined the phrase Pentecostal minimalists. I
No.
believe in it, man. It's in the Word. I got no problem with the gifts of the Spirit and that. But
Mhm.
if that becomes the thing that you're chasing, if
Yeah.
it's all about, did somebody speak in tongues or run around the sanctuary? I think maybe we've missed the really important things, and that is who gives the gifts, man. What are they there for?
Yeah.
And if it's about you, you're doing it wrong.
You said Pentecostal minimalist is what your wife said. I think we call
Yeah.
it cautious continuationists. So yeah, it's almost the same idea, So it's like
Yeah.
we believe in the gifts of the Spirit, but it's kind of like some of the stuff can be goofy. And if you weren't raised in the church in the 80s and 90s, you probably didn't experience any of that stuff that we experienced, right? But no, that's great. I love that because I was
Yeah.
thinking that because I knew you said you're non-denominational. I'm thinking that sounds very, because most non-denominational, even Baptist type churches, even the charismatics, we do topical, and there's a time and place for topical, but I think
Sure.
that's awesome because you were saying about the Psalms. So then your Psalms will, like, a person like the youth pastor, the children's pastor, pick like, hey, I'm gonna preach out of Psalm 22, and they'll kind of do that whole text. Then is that what they're doing?
Yeah, it depends on the person. So my our youth leader here, youth pastor Luke is just, I mean, he's just smart, man. Like he and I tag team sometimes together
Yeah.
because I'm the just kind of, I'm that guy. And Luke is a little bit more reserved. He's brilliant. And
Yeah.
so he and I tag team together sometimes. And so he'll bring something out and tie it. He's so good at tying New Testament principles to Old Testament, right?
Yeah.
He just understands that. And so we have a great time kind of doing that together. So when it's Luke's week, you're going to get a little bit more expository.
Mhm.
Somebody else, Samantha, our children's pastor, she is going to read the psalm and then pick an idea out and be a little bit more topical. So it's both, and you're going to get all kinds
Yeah.
of and that's the beauty of it, right? You're going to
Yeah.
get so many different perspectives. And then, if there's anything, I'm there, obviously in the room in case, it wouldn't be the first time it's happened where a really well-meaning somebody who just loves Jesus says something that I'm like, I got to blow the whistle, throw the flag, and be like, not exactly what
Flag
that
on the
means,
play. Yeah.
and they know that I love them enough and trust the Holy Spirit's work enough to be like, here, do this, like press into this,
Mhm.
and that I love them and the church and the word enough to be like, time out.
Yeah.
That's not quite right,
Yeah.
So yeah, it's cool, but you'll get all kinds of things, and then once we start back in September into Ephesians, I'll go back to the word by word, verse by verse, and that's honestly changed. Even though I've been doing this for 17 years now, which is not a long time in the grand scheme of things, um, this study of Ephesians has changed the way that I preach. And I actually, to the thought of actually having to do a topical message is just like, ooh, like I love it. I love this expository preaching style.
Mhm.
I love to listen to that. When I listen, I'm picking people that aren't my bent, right? I don't
Right.
need somebody. I don't need to surround myself with things I already know and believe. I want somebody to press on some buttons. Maybe I'm not a Calvinist. I'm not mad at him, but I'm not a
Right.
Calvinist. But like John Piper,
Yeah.
man, that brother's expository preaching is solid. John MacArthur, who I
MacArthur.
disagree with
I know.
wildly on some
I
things,
agree. Yeah. The
his
rigor. Yeah.
messiology
Yeah.
is brilliant.
Yeah. You listen to
So
Vodi,
it's
have you
so I
heard
try to surround myself with those guys.
Vodi Bakum? He's in the similar vein. Vodi Bakum. Oh my God. Yeah. It's like his
That
message
dude's
his
he,
message on why I believe the Bible is true. And then he got to the end of it and said, that was that boring? That was expositional. Was that boring? And I was thinking, no, I need to write all this stuff down. Yeah, I
yeah.
totally, we are so much on the same point with this because for the churches I grew up in, I'm thinking, just take the text in its context.
The thing that I love about the first three chapters of Ephesians, not that we need to jump into Ephesians here,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
is all theology. He's desperately trying to get the Jews
mhm,
and the Gentiles to understand how they got invited to the party.
yeah, yeah,
That these Gentiles they belong, they've been adopted in. Do you know what that means? I mean, they've been given the Spirit as a deposit on this future inheritance, right? Like
yeah.
he's trying to get the Jews to understand it's okay. They don't have to jump through the same hoops you did because they got here through Christ. It's different, but that was and
That's
then to the
yeah,
Gentiles, it's okay.
yeah,
But that means that being a part of the family, there's some stuff, yeah, you kind of become a Jew now, like it's brilliant. And the way that Paul walks them through that. And then the next three chapters, 4, 5, and 6, are the practical application of everything that 1, 2, and 3, the foundation that was laid. And I'm just like, I'm geeking out every week.
yeah.
Like
That's
I
great.
feel like I show up to find out what I'm going to say just as much as they do.
Ah, that's great. So we had talked earlier, and you had mentioned you're bivocational, so you're working
Yes.
at the church on church stuff, and you have a job on the side, and plus you're helping with Reach the Rest. So can you just share with people what are some of the challenges and the blessings of being bivocational?
So the challenge, honestly, is me, or at least was me, because the thing that I see most bivocational pastors, not all, but most bivocational pastors, it's a bit cyclical, right? So I'm bivocational because the church isn't big enough, and part of the reason that the church isn't big enough is because you have one guy trying to do everything.
Mm-hmm.
I've got to work for a living. I only have this much time, and so trying to. I mean, he's got a family to take care of, and I'm again. I planted this church 17 years ago, and I've always had a job for 17 years. The first 5 or 6 years, man, it was a slog. We weren't going anywhere. It was so hard because Randy Davis thought that Randy Davis had to clean the church, not only preach the messages, find a way to make sure he's there to teach on Wednesday, to do this, to do that, to do the other thing. I was the marketing guy. I mean, I did everything because that's what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to do this thing. God called me into ministry, and man, me and my wife and kids, I'm just going to work them guys to death, and we're going to do this thing. And so there, I mean, everybody knows, we've heard about the law of the lid. You can't, you can't get beyond that lid. And so the lid in most cases with churches that have bivocational pastors is the pastor, because he's trying to do it all. And so the blessing is somebody kind of came along and said, you realize this is I mean, they were just lovingly hard on me. This is never going to grow because it can't grow beyond you, and you're at your limits, man. You've done all you can do. You don't even like kids all that much. You're a terrible children's pastor. You're not the guy. You can't run. This is stupid, man. What are you doing? And so I started building a team. And the hard part about the building, it's easy to get a bunch of people together and still not let them go and empower them. And it wasn't until I understood the priesthood of believers, that every believer is called to be a priest in some way, form, or fashion, that their faith is being allowed to be lived out and to trust them. So I had to stop just knowing about it and start believing it, and then trusting people, and then letting them do what they do. Hold them accountable, but let them run. Let these people come around you. This is their church. They love it. They want to be here. They show up every week. They're giving, they're supporting, they're encouraging you. So plug them in. Let them have some skin in the game, and let them put their DNA on some things. And once I did that, it changed everything. I have a leadership team, meets every Monday night. And we sit around and we go, okay, give me, what happened in kids ministry yesterday? You've got to have something that you're celebrating, and you've got to have a needs work, because that means you're looking at it, you're examining it. And then we write that down. Okay. And now as the pastor, I don't have to fix it. That's not my job. My job is to say, hey, how are you doing?
Yeah.
What's going on back there? Wow, that's amazing, man. That's so great. That happened, that you're seeing this helper is now coming to you and saying, I want to teach. Can you put me in the rotation? And, because kids ministry is hard. And then all right, so what's our needs work? And okay, what are you going to do about that? How are you going to address that? How can I help you? What resource do you need? How can I empower you? But man, once I did that, this thing it took off. I mean, we're still a smaller church where we bounce around 100, but I've got a leadership team that doesn't need a full-time pastor, because that wasn't an option.
Okay.
I had to work. I had to provide for my family. I had to go do those things. And so once, the blessing of it is that Pastor Randy let people do what people are passionate about and love to do. And so any pastor out there, bivocational pastor, that's still trying to kind of control it and is scared, because you're going to be fearful. Like, if I let this go, let it go and trust the Holy Spirit's work in other people's lives. There's a reason that God has put people around you that he has. Once I realized that, man, they don't need a full-time pastor. We don't need one here. We don't need a dude to sit up and, I mean, I'm at the church office today because I have the best internet connection here. And so I don't have to be here Monday through Friday, in certain hours. I'm here a lot because I love it. I just walk through the building because I'm in a place now after 17 years where I'm not working full time. I've got the Reach the Rest gig, which I love, and I'm a part of that team. I do sales for a roofing company that just go out and meet with homeowners, and it's which just supplements what my family needs, because I still have that. If you do it bivocational with a bivocational pastor and you empower other people, you don't have to carry all that water yourself, man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how about from a financial
100%.
perspective, right? So you're this. So I think the data suggests that about 92% of the churches in the United States have less than 250 people, and the majority have less than 100. So I think there's a danger of people thinking that churches have to be these massive cathedrals with all this slick marketing and Instagram type pastors. I'm not trying to be judgmental or critical, but I have a heart for
Again,
the small church, because here's my rule of thumb. When I lived in Illinois, we lived in suburban Chicago, and we were visiting churches, and this church was a fantastic church. Loved the preaching, music was perfect, but like it was like 6,000 people, right? And so every
yeah,
Sunday they had multiple services. You had to have police officers direct traffic, and I was like, I think if you have to have police officers direct traffic, maybe your church is too big. I just kind of goofy
yeah,
thing to say, but I'm thinking there's no way, if one of my kids were getting married or if someone in my family died, the pastor would have any idea who I was. And for me, that's
right.
important, that the pastor, the marrying and bearing project, right? That's a responsibility for a pastor. I want to be able to know that if I'm in crisis mode, I can pick up the phone and they can recognize maybe not my voice, but know who I am at least, and point me in the right
Mhm.
direction. Not that the pastor has to fix all this stuff, because you do have leadership people in place. But if you have a church and these churches of 5, 10,000 people are kind of gobbling up smaller churches and rebranding them. And this is me, right? This is like what Paul says. This is not God. This is my opinion. I have a problem with that. I don't want to watch a video of somebody from the biggest city in my country. Like, say, if it was you, someone from Philadelphia it has this massive church and they have 500 satellites, and you're watching the video. I could just stay at home and do that. I think sometimes the churches of 100 people, it is tough work to balance it. It really is. But I think the Apostle Paul set a great example of what he did as bivocational. He gave us scripture to help with that out and modeled it. And can you just and I'm not trying to get people depressed, but can you say just the grind? And I think some of it has to be with managing your time well and setting proper expectations
Mhm.
with the church people and your employer. Can you tell me about that? Just working through that part of it as doing, because you've been doing it a long time. You have a lot of wisdom.
Well, that remains to be seen. But
Eh,
yeah, it is. A lot of it has to do with expectations because it's always been this way. The church, they understand. I mean, now look, they know. I mean, I make my cell phone available. I sleep with it beside the bed, and it's never
mhm,
turned off. I mean, I want my people know that, and they don't abuse it.
mhm,
Which is, and again, it's some of that's unique because I have such a the 80-20 rule really applies in most churches, but not here
mhm.
because like we have we have our volunteer picnic this Sunday afternoon,
Oh
and we're
yeah,
just going to love on our volunteers.
yeah.
I told you we've got about 100. We bounce. I mean, it just depends. It's anywhere from 75 to 105 people. I mean, that's just the
Mhm,
Sunday swing. It's
yeah,
somewhere in there. Sometimes 120. I'm just like, where did all these people
yeah.
come from? Um, there'll be over 60 people at the volunteer picnic
Mhm,
that volunteer in one way, shape, or form. We have a lot of buy-in and stuff like that. So they have one another as well. We do life groups. So we try to plug them in
yeah,
together. We have, my life group leader. If they know that they can call Mike or Lori. They know that they can call Gabriel, who's a guy here at the church that um, is loves men's ministry type stuff, and he's just proven himself to be reliable. I'm going to get a phone call. Hey, so and so reached out, wanted you to know kind of what's going on, but I don't feel the need to then like jump in there and be like, oh, I can't
right,
have somebody else be their go to.
yeah,
That's just not the way that the first century church was built. That's not what Paul did. That's
right.
just not how. I'm not the Pope, and I don't want to be. You
No,
know,
no, no.
um, and so setting those expectations, letting them know that there's more than just me, and then but if you need me, I'm there. And so there's that piece. On the financial piece, I again am super blessed that I have a church that is very faithful in their giving. It's not that I couldn't take a salary, and I don't know, I mentioned that, but I chose not to. I came out when I planted this church. I came out of a church split, which is so often the case for the non-denominational guys, right? I'm going to show them the right way to do it, and that wasn't my heart.
Mhm,
But my heart was broke because I grew up in a church where I had come to Christ, and was the, preached on Sunday mornings. I was the youth leader at the time there at that church. I ran sound. I played on the worship team. I became a member of the pastor's council. And sitting in a council meeting, we're going over the budget, and I started asking questions, and the answer, unfortunately, to those questions was, "That's none of your business." And I'm like, no, that's not true, because I'm called as a member here, as a member of your council, to make sure that we're stewarding all of these people that are giving. And some of them, yeah, no big deal, stroke that check. And then
Yeah.
for other people, man, they're making choices
Yeah.
to be obedient. And I need to know that we're doing this in a right way. And then that ended up ugly and kind of blowing up. And so, right, wrong, or indifferent, man, when I knew that God was calling me into ministry, I knew that I knew that this is what God was doing. I knew that Jesus Alive Ministries was God's will for my life, and to do this, and to plant a church and pastor. And I stepped into it saying, I'll never take a salary. I will never, ever have somebody look at me and say what I said about that man that I got saved under his ministry. And that is, he's just doing this for the money.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not mad at pastors who take salaries and get paid. I'm not at all. I don't want you to hear that. Don't want anybody out there to hear that. But for me, that was important to me, that that we just do, what we do here transparently. And that, I think that's why my church this church, God's church, is so giving, because, man, it's transparent, bro. The third Sunday in January, we have a business meeting, and every cent that came in and went out, and I do take a housing allowance. The church can't provide me with a parsonage. So I get a housing allowance that keeps the roof over my head, which allows me now to not have to be full-time bivocational. I can work at Reach the Rest and be a part of that ministry, and I can be here and be more involved in the church, and then have my little side hustle doing, selling roofs. And God makes that all work. But that transparency, man, just making sure that God's people know what's going on, opens them up to give. I have church members that are somewhat furious with me. I don't, man, look what God's done here. Why aren't you taking a salary? Because I don't, nope. That's where I am, bro. And I'm just asking you to trust me. I can work. I believe that men should work. You don't need me sitting in my office drinking coffee Monday through Friday, looking at the walls, man. I want to be involved in the community more. And so we just opened a food pantry. We got an oil change ministry for single moms and widows, because we have the resources, because they're not going to salary. 2 people in this church actually get paid. The janitor, because that brother deserves to get paid.
Fair, yeah.
And we have an administrative assistant, a woman who is really good at the things I'm not good at. I'm good at this. Put me in a room full of people, man. I'm good at that, but I'm not real administrative. And so having somebody that can do that, so we can take our resources and really pinpoint that to get for the ROI. As much as I hate the word ROI in a church setting, let's just be real. There's a return on investment. What are we doing with those? How are we stewarding the blessings of God through the people of God? And so, I hope that answers your question.
No,
I know
great.
I kind of went rabbit trail on you.
That is great. And I think that it kind of leads into what I want to ask next about Reach the Rest. Because when we first met, we were talking about Reach the Rest. This is probably a few weeks ago. We were having a conversation, and you said, like, the first offering you took, and it was for a church of your size, especially, was a really big offering, and kind of got the attention of the folks that Reach the Rest. And that is possible in part because of how your structure is set up. Not everyone can do that, because there are a lot of competing priorities or commitments to every dollar it comes in. And I think church members, I'll just try to put myself in I'm going to church and I'm giving money every week or whatever. I think there's a assumption by most people that ministry is happening. That's the poor are being taken care of. Like in your case, oil changes are happening, food banks are being set up. But in a lot of cases, that's not happening. I mean, it's takes every dollar just to keep the doors open in a lot of places. So yours, I think, is that. So can you share how that this transition with you, not transition, this extra opportunity, because so you're the ROI, the ROI for your church specifically is the opportunity to be partnering with Reach the Rest. And most people
Yeah.
probably don't know who are listening to this. I mean, I talk about it once in a while. I'll say, hey, we support this ministry out of Texas. It's super cool. You should, get involved. But you're boots on the ground helping them out. What can you share with people who are listening, and an opportunity that any of us have to partner with this ministry, reaching awesome, awesome places?
It's funny. I was working here at the church 2 years ago. We needed more space, so we had this big gigantic hallway in the back. I built a wall, stuck a door in it, a couple of windows, and turned it into a nursery so we could move some classes around. But while I'm back there kind of working, I listen to podcasts, and I listen to a guy named Steve Dace. He is biblical worldview, so it's political. I try not to let that get, I try to remind myself that this is not my home. I'm just passing through here. I have a king and a kingdom. I have a passport for that kingdom through Christ. I'm going there someday. But I still I enjoy the political, some of that stuff. And so I listened to Steve Dace, and he had a guy on named Doug Cobb who wrote a book. And the book was called And Then the End Will Come. So it's a political podcast talking about eschatology, right? And so I'm just listening to that, and I'm, back there, working away. And I was just like, man, I've never, wow, I've never thought of it that way. And it's built on the premise of Matthew 24:14.
Okay.
Jesus says that when the gospel of the kingdom is proclaimed throughout all the earth as a testimony to the nations, then the end will come. So you want to know, get the gospel to all the places it's not, and we can wrap this thing up and go home. And so I'm like, wow, that's cool. So I came in here to my office, sat down, jumped on Amazon, ordered the book, went back to doing my thing. The book came in a few days later. I'm reading it. I'm like, oh my gosh, I did a series then here at church on eschatology.
Ooh.
Like based on some of the things that he taught. And again, expanding my view on it. I've got my view. This is what I think. I didn't really, and now I'm looking at things, and it was just a blessing. And so I'm getting towards the end of that sermon series, and I'm looking at Doug Cobb's website. He's with a organization called the Finishing Fund, and he manages a fund. When you think fund, you're thinking stock market, kind of like that. It's a fund, and he has very large investors. I mean, people who give into that fund, I'm like, the minimum is like $10,000.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's invested, and they do this, and they're growing it. I mean, it's really cool, above my pay grade. I don't understand all of that. My wife works for Edward Jones, and she starts telling me like, oh, the market was really not very happy today. And I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
but, so I'm looking at his site, and then I come across, he's like, these are ministries running at this idea of, and it was the first time I'd heard a UPG and a UUPG. So UPG stands for Unengaged People Group. That is a group of people in the world that has less than 2% believers in Christ.
Okay.
A UUPG is an unreached, unengaged people group. That means, to our knowledge, there are no believers and never have been. That blew me away, Tim. I was like, there are still places in the world that have never heard the gospel, like ever. Like there's just, those places still exist because I'm an American pastor. And I'm hard. If you want to know who I'm hardest the most on, it's American pastors.
Sure.
I'm an American pastor. I'm trying to keep the wheels on the local church, make sure they like the coffee that we're serving, and hope they come back. Right? Like there's some of that is a little tongue in cheek and a little bit too real. And so I'm like, oh my gosh. I started looking at some of the websites. I came across Reach the Rest. And the first thing I saw on the website at reachtherest.org is they're talking about planting a church in the darkest areas, the 1040 window that most believers have heard of. And if you haven't, the 1040 window is the latitude lines between 10 and 40, which cuts right through the heart of Africa, the Middle East, just the Far East, where it is the most dangerous, difficult places to get the gospel. And so that 1040 window is called planting churches there, and doing it for $300 or less. And I'm like, no way.
What? Yeah, yeah.
And so to the point that you made, I'm wrapping up my series. I found this. I threw the website up on the screen in the sanctuary and said, hey guys, here's what we're going to do. In 3 weeks, we're wrapping up this series. I'm giving you guys lots of heads up. I just put the website right up on the screen. Said you can go check these guys out. I've been reading about them and looking into it. Here's some things I love about what Reach the Rest does. They don't send white guys to those places.
Mm-hmm.
They don't send missionaries. They train locals. And as soon as I read that, I'm like, that's brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
They don't build buildings. Reach the Rest does not build buildings. It's house church driven. It's going to have to come back to the house. It's got to go back to us being the church and not that building that we work so hard to make, this really cool thing. It's got to come home. And so I was like, so it's house church driven. They can do it for less than $300. How many churches do we want to plant? How many churches do we want to plant over there? So here's what we're going to do, church. We're going to take up an offering in 3 weeks. And here's what I'll say to you. Every dollar that you guys give in that offering, the church will match. And so part of me is scared to death somebody's going to stroke some gigantic check, right? Like I'm being honest with you. There's a part of me because I remember saying to the treasurer, "Hey, here's the offer I'm going to make the congregation." And he's like looking down. And he's like, "You want to what?"
You want to what?
And I'm like, "Yeah, no, we're gonna match whatever they give." He goes, "No, that's great, but here's how much money's in the bank." And I'm like, I know these people pretty well. I feel like this is the leading of the Holy Spirit. He's not gonna lead us someplace that push us off the cliff and let us fall. And so our little church here, we took up that offering that Sunday, and the church gave $7,000.
Awesome.
And I was like blown away, man. I couldn't believe it. I mean, I could, and I knew their heart, and I knew their generosity. And so that then turns into me sending an email, info@Reach the Rest. I'm like, hey, my name is Randy Davis. I pastor a church in South Central Pennsylvania called Jesus Alive Ministries. We took up an offering. I'd like to send you a check. I didn't say how much it was for. Took up an offering. Want to send you a check. What's the best way for me to go about that? And the response I got back was, you could tell the person on the other end of the email was like, let me guess. You're a rich prince in Dubai, and I need to send you a couple of bucks so that we can, you can send me your check. And so I read it, and it was, but the guy who sent me the email had a signature line with a cell phone number. And so I picked up the phone, I called it, and he answered. And I said, hey, my name's Randy Davis. I pastor a church in Waynesboro. I sent you an email, and I kind of get the feeling you might think I'm not for real. And he said, bro, I was for sure you weren't for real. Tell me about it. And so I just told him the story, and he's like, that's incredible. Like, did you talk to anybody in the organization? Nope. Just looked at your website and really felt like this is the direction that the Lord would have us go. And so long story, not as long as I make every story. I ended up, he invited me to, I sent the check. They came here. The CEO at the time, a guy named Mike Jackson, CEO, and Josh Yates, who is the head of, he's our Bible smuggler. And yes, I said that right. We are one of the larger Bible smuggling operations. We just, we just do it. Some people struggle with that. What do you mean? Well, we mean exactly what it sounds like. Yeah. And he also oversees the Middle East, which is where my heart was for. And so they actually came here to the church and like they showed up and spoke at my church, and it was amazing. And so the people were like, let's take up another offering. And I'm like, let's do it. And they left that day with another like $9,000 or $10,000 check. I'm like, where are you people coming up with this? But I'm a firm believer, man. And the thing I love about your, Savvy Stewardship is is the people of God want to be generous. The
Yes.
people of God, they want to give. And if you will lay something before them that is just honest and transparent, and just share what God's doing, they want to get on board. And so, so that's how I got here. Mike said, "Hey, what do you do?" And I said, "Well, I'm a software salesman in the scrap and recycling industry." And so he's like, "I can't pay you what you make there. But would you think about coming on and being a relationship guy and help us raise money for people in the field?" And so I prayed about it, and
Yeah.
I was like, "Okay." And I quit that job. And here's what's cool, man. I already knew this happened in September of 22. And I knew for months before that. I had been telling my wife and telling my church, because I traveled for that company. I traveled a lot. I mean, I don't recommend this as a bivocational pastor, but I got on a plane. I'd preach my guts out on Sunday morning, get on a plane Sunday night, fly to a scrapyard, do their installation, setup, training, networking, all of that stuff, spend 2 or 3 days, get on a plane, fly to the next one, do it again, get home Thursday, Friday, most cases, in the evening, prep all day Saturday, preach on Sunday, and go get on a plane again. So when I tell you that a team is important,
Yeah.
it was important. I worked 7 days a week for about 14 years straight, and grateful that God, I look back on that now and go, how'd that even work? But anyway, I had been telling people, man, my life's going to change in September. They're like, what does that mean? I don't know, but I know that it's going to change. And so some really cool things happened, that allowed me to April and I, my wife, April, of 30 years, by the way, 3 kids, 6 grandkids, and the 7th one's on the way.
Hey.
All of my kids work here at the church. They're involved in different aspects of ministry. I'm just can't even talk, just how blessed I am to know that my son, daughters, and daughter-in-law and sons-in-laws love Jesus, and all of that. But
Yes.
I just knew that something was changing, and in September they made me that offer, and I was able to quit that job with the software thing, and come to work for Reach the Rest, and now I have a second little thing doing the roof thing.
Yeah.
But So that's how I got involved in RTR. I got to go to the Middle East,
Mm.
and that was the first thing in the wisdom of the leadership there at RTR, was to get me over there, because it's one thing to sit here and to tell you a story that I heard through a Zoom call with somebody over there, right? I mean, I can do that and I can share somebody else's story. But to get on a plane and fly over there, and to go to Turkey, and to go to Erbil, Iraq, to be in Kurdistan, to be in a Syrian refugee camp with I mean, I think I've been broke before, but I've never been that poor.
Yeah.
I've never had my family live in a 10 by 10 concrete block structure, and have joy that
Mm.
they have, right?
Yeah.
And so to be in those places, to sit in a room, training these Iranians, the fastest growing church in the world right now is in Iran.
Wow.
Reach the Rest has planted 1,600 house churches in Iran in the last 2 years.
Wow.
It's unfathomable. I mean, it's amazing. I've got pictures of me loading Bibles into the back of a smuggler's truck that are headed to Iran. I've got pictures of those same Bibles, because that's one of the things we hold them accountable to do, is we've gathered these resources and shipped these Bibles over there. Is they've got to take a picture of the Bible next to the street sign, or the billboard that says you're now entering Tehran, or whatever, all these places, and to know that that I was a part of that my church has been a part of that God is moving in the darkest places in the world because of Savvy Stewardship, because men and women are hearing that God is on the move in those places, that that there are people out there that have never heard the gospel and need to, and go, man, you talk about ROI right
Mm.
now. I mean, RTR, Reach the Rest, we're lean, bro.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's only a handful of us in the United States. And when I say handful, I mean, I don't know that there's 5.
Right.
And then we've got our partners around the world. We have 40 partners in those places, and each one of them have leaders who have leaders who have leaders. I mean, just in the first 3 months of this year, we got the gospel shared to 604,000 people.
Wow. That's amazing.
Planted 5,400 churches,
Mhm.
reached 1,200 of those unreached, unengaged people groups, baptized tens of thousands, and trained 34,000 more leaders. And that was just the first 3 months of this year. So our ROI on that is about 91% of the every cent that is given. 91% of that goes to the field. We're
Wow.
running on an 8 or 9% margin for administrative expenses, and the more the giving goes up, actually, the lower that, because
Sure.
we don't just
Yeah. Right.
keep bringing people into the organization, because it's not built here. There's a few of us
Yeah.
out there raising funds, or but for the most part, man, it is all getting to the field, to those places that need it most. And so that's how I got here.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it. And so I got to be over there. I got to be in these trainings, training Iranians, hearing their stories. And I'm just going to share one real quick story, man.
Do, yeah.
We had come back from the warehouse loading Bibles, and I asked if I could have one. And they're like, yeah, absolutely. And so I've got a Bible here that's in Farsi. I
Oh,
can't read it, but
yeah.
but here it is. This is the New Testament in Farsi.
Yeah.
And we got back to the house where we're training these Iranians, and we brought a case of Bibles with us to the house so that they had something to read. And we handed the Bibles out. And man, I'll never forget it. This brother takes the Bible, and he's just looking at it. And this is the first thing he does. Sticks his nose in it and smells it. And I'm like,
Wow. Yeah.
and so I ask, we call him Sam. I'm not going to use his real name. We call him Sam.
Yeah.
He's under threat of death. I mean, this dude has got hundreds of churches in Iran that he's responsible for. He when I was there, he was living in Iraq. They tried to kill him. We moved him to another country that's close. And so I'm there, and I go, why did he do that? And so he asks him, and this is his story. He said, most of the time when we get the Bibles, they smell like donkey. And I'm like, that's when it dawned on me, because that truck I loaded is going to get across the border and go hide out someplace in a warehouse in the middle of nowhere. And then they're going to use donkeys to pack them in over the mountains to get to these people. And this was the first time that he had taken the plastic off of a Bible and was like, but just that respect and reverence and awe and joy in the word, man, that he did that. And so my question was, I'm ignorant. I don't know. I'm like, can you take that home? And he's like, no. I go back home with this and get caught with it. They'll torture me. Yeah. He's sitting next to his wife, his sister, his niece, and his 79-year-old mother, who came to get trained, which is a whole nother story that is just a beautiful story. He's sitting with him and goes, they would kill me and torture her. They'd use my cell phone to figure out where I've been, who I've texted, but they're using all kinds of, like Signal and different apps and things like that to try to keep it as safe as possible. Mm-hmm. He said, no, they would trace me back to this room, even though it's in a different country, and in an effort to destroy the network. And I'm just, the first time that I don't know what that's like. I've got a sign on my building. We put videos out on Facebook saying, here we are. Yeah. He's over there, trying to get to his sphere of influence, the people in his life, and because that's how we teach them to do it. It was just it changed my life, man. It did. That being in those rooms, hearing those stories, sitting with those people, hearing their testimonies about the man in white, the fact that right now is the Muslims' time to come to Christ. They're having dreams. Jesus is coming to them, tapping them on the shoulder and saying, "Hey, go down," exactly the way that it happened for Paul. You know
Yeah.
the story of Paul, right?
Yeah.
He's going with letters. He's going to go, arrest some brothers, and he gets knocked off the horse. The Holy Spirit says it. The Lord says to him, "Go to a street called Straight, and you're looking for a brother named Ananias, and he's going to tell you about me, and he's going to heal you."
Yeah.
It's the same thing that's happening now. They're going to they're having these dreams, and they're being told, "Go down here to this guy's house." They show up in the middle of the night, knock on the door, scared to death. The guy opens the door and goes, "I've been waiting on you." And he goes, "I had a drink." "I know. Come on
Yeah.
in, man.
Yeah.
I've been waiting for you."
Yeah.
That's
Amazing.
mind blowing to me. So I got on that plane when I left there, trying to figure out how to get back. Like, how am I going to get back
Yeah.
to those people and sit in those rooms? And the hard part for me, and the reason I get emotional about it is, I know I know that the Lord spoke to me on that plane on my way home and said, "I don't need you there.
Mm.
I need you where you are, making sure that they have everything
Yeah.
they need to do what I've called them to do."
Yeah.
Man, that was, because I just want to go back, and I want to feel all the feelings, and I want to hear the stories, and I want to cheer them on, and having the honor to be asked, "Pastor Randy, would you pray for these brothers before they go back to Iran or wherever?" And I'm like, "Pray for them."
Okay. Put your
These
hands on
brothers
me.
have done
Yeah.
more in the last. Yeah, exactly. Like, I want some of what you got, but
Yeah.
it was that understanding that God has gifted me, Randy Davis, to do certain things and to come home and to tell their stories, so that men and women of God can hear those stories and go to a website and click on a give button and just be a part of it. It costs $5 to get a Bible into one of their hands.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
$5 is all it costs to
Yeah.
get a Bible smuggled into those places. $300 plants a church, and so, I mean,
Yeah.
that's how I got here. That's kind of, that's my story. But
Yeah. Yeah, and I had a similar way of kind of stumbled across the Reach the Rest website too, and my wife and I, like, yeah, we need to start giving to this. And our church, we planted a church in Phoenix a couple of years ago, and it's going well. I talked to the pastor. He's a young guy. I talked to the pastor a couple of weeks ago. He's doing fantastic. He's right outside Grand Canyon University, reaching a bunch of college kids. It's going well. But talking about return on investment, that church plant costs us $250,000.
right,
And so, again, I'm glad we participated in it. I know the kid, he's doing a great job, and it's needed. However, most of us don't have $250,000 just sitting around collecting dust, but most of us have
right,
$5. And if you want to, and say, hey, I just want to make sure, I want somebody to get a Bible. And I believe the whole premise behind Savvy Stewardship is based on the parable of the unjust steward, Luke 16:9, where Jesus tells the people in that parable to make friends of yourself of unrighteous mammon, so that when it fails, they will reward you in heavenly, welcome you in heavenly places. Now, this is a real 30-second understanding of that scripture. I interpret that scripture meaning that he is saying it's okay to give my money away, because my money as a Christian is his money, right? And it's okay to do that. He's like using these two comparisons, saying, give it away. I'm fine with that. Most of us had to get to the position where we can do it. But the thing
right.
is, once that happens, because our money here is no good in heaven, no good in heaven. And so unspent
Yeah,
money and
he
misspent
paves
money,
the streets with the thing that we climb
yeah,
after, right?
right. We can't pay our way. We can't earn our way into heaven by giving money. However, we can, with the resources God's entrusted us with, use it for eternal purposes. And when we get there, we have all eternity to hang out with people. And if that's, say, I'm talking to the person who $5 is a sacrifice. I've been there. Randy's been there before, where $5 is going to buy some rice and a couple cans of beans, and we're not going to eat. I've been there. I understand. But you're
Yeah.
saying, you know what? I'm going to give this $5. I believe in heaven, that person, let's say Farsi, because that was the term that was used, that person who got that Bible in their own language, and everything they do after that multiplied you're gonna be hanging out with somebody in heaven someday, and they're like, you know what? I'm your friend because of that, right? That's the eternal
Yeah.
friends in high places. And this is something that so important for us as church people, as Christ followers to get, is to be so super generous. Now I know everyone can't be, because there are
Mhm.
restrictions, but it's all relative, right? I tell people sometimes, do you have Aldi? You have Aldi where you are in Pennsylvania, the store where you put the quarter in the thing, right?
They're opening one,
Yeah.
like they're building it right now.
Oh,
This,
Aldi's the,
they're got my wife is so
Oh,
stoked about the
yeah.
Aldi, man.
Aldi's the best. But I'm telling people, I say, you know what? If you're scraping by, leave a cart for somebody. That 25 cents is not going to change your life, but it gets the muscle of giving, get that muscle
Mhm.
moving. And next thing you know, it's something else, $5. And you can say a
Right.
plan. Maybe you have $300 for a year. You can do that. Say, what, we want to plant a church in the 1040 window as a family. So you
Mhm.
do, 25, $30 a month. And next thing you know,
Yeah.
it's there to do. So that's my encouragement for people, is to, hey, I know you're giving to your church, and we do this. The lion's share of our money goes to the local church. So we do, that's how we believe. But we're also giving to other churches, and we love giving to reach the rest. And just listening to you, I'm just encouraged to actually give more now. So you
Well,
got me all fired up in your story. So, but no, I really
uh,
thank you for being here today. Yeah, you want to say something else?
oh
Go ahead.
man.
Yeah.
No, just thanks for the opportunity. One of the things that we did, in case there's any pastors out there listening, I believe in the tithe. I believe in it. It's
Mhm.
scriptural. Always have done that, but I've always done that as a church as well. 10% of every dollar that comes through the door of the church goes back out in the form of missions. And so we split that between local and foreign. I want to be giving to the pregnancy ministries here in town. We're
Yeah.
giving towards, different things, human services and things like that, to try to be a blessing here locally.
Hmm.
And then the other half of that tithe actually goes to reach the rest.
Yeah.
And because that means I can stand up as a pastor and say, here's one of the reasons that I encourage you to be faithful to the local church. Because in that faithfulness, we don't just have a building and the heat's on in the winter and the air conditioning's on in the summer. And, we don't just have this here and all of that. But look at what you're doing. I can put a list of people up there that we've supported and then reach the rest. You're a part of those 600,000 gospel shares in the first quarter of this year. We were a part of that. That
Mhm.
that if it's $300 to plant a church, that every quarter, not a big
Yep.
church, we're
Yep.
we're sending out about $5,000 a quarter.
Yeah.
That means we're brought in 50 grand that quarter.
Yeah.
And so 2,500 of that to 3,000, depending on the giving, the time
Yeah.
of year, went to reach the rest. 3,000. That means we planted this church. We did 10 churches. And then I have people in the congregation that are like, wow, that's awesome. Can I give myself to reach the rest? Like, that's why we have envelopes. The tithe is to come into the storehouse, but you want to give? You want to give to reach the rest? You want to do that? I've got several people that, we could do $30 a month.
Hmm. Yeah.
That's amazing. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
that's a
Absolutely. Yeah.
church. Your family, you guys are going to plant a church. I mean, that's planting a church and getting a couple of Bibles.
Yeah.
The 60, that's another, that's another 10 Bibles, 12 Bible, whatever that is, into along with that church plant. It's, every little bit that matters. There are people out there, and to mirror something you said a minute ago, in this role, I have met people that are, I mean, wealthy. I mean, like I don't even know, I don't even understand that kind of wealth. Um, and they all of them that I have run into, all have the same mindset. It all belongs to God. I'm not capable of doing this. It's God's.
Mhm.
I just had a guy tell me this the other day. I mean, this family, they have their own
Yeah.
foundation. They got
Foundation.
their own trust foundation, right?
Yeah.
It's named after their last name.
Mhm.
And I mean, because they're like, no, we want to be, they didn't use the word savvy stewards, but we
Mm.
want to be good stewards. We love Reach the Rest because you're telling us what's going on, and wow, hearing those stories and having that, we want to give to that. But every one of them I run into have that understanding. This all belongs to him. And so I just want to honor him with what he's blessed me with. And I would say that the reason that he's blessed them is because he's honoring them with it. Whether it's that $30 that you're like, we rearranged the budget and we can do this, or you're the guy stroking $30,000 checks.
Mm-hmm.
All of it in the eyes of the Lord, man, obedience is obedience and generosity is generosity. But anyway, man, I appreciate being able to be here again. This is my first podcast.
First of many.
I loved it, man.
Yeah, first of many.
I hope so. I would love to. I'd love to come back and share the quarterly reports as they come out. We're actually working on Q2 right now, and on a personal note, man, the reason that you and I got to talking is because I saw that you gave, that you and your family, you guys gave, and I reached out to just say thank you. And now here we are, man, getting to tell others about this, about what God is doing in places I didn't even know 2 years ago existed.
Me either. So that's been a blessing. So thank you for being here today, Randy. We'll see us again soon with a new video, new podcast. Until then, I dare you to profit so you can practice and promote radical, revolutionary, fearless generosity. Blessings.